There we go. Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna give it maybe another minute or so to see if we have more people, and then we'll get started, okay? I hope everybody's having a great week. I think the people I have right now, you're all audio chat pros. I was gonna go a little bit over housekeeping, but you're better than me at that. Okay, great, great, great. BJ, did you get your computer good to go too? I'm
I'm
ready to
ready to
kick
go.
off. Okay. Well, we're gonna get started. I know there will be more people joining in and out, and as we have been talking throughout the last couple of weeks, this is very, very, very informal, although I am super excited and I feel almost privileged to be able to be joined by people like BJ, who we have today, who are putting, a lot of intentionality to share content, create content, put their voices out there on this platform. And kindly enough, he shared with me a very, very cool post that I think is really, really worth diving into because it goes beyond um, our limitations sometimes to consider even using this platform, and it really exposes certain vulnerabilities that we sometimes don't think about on the day to day. So I hope that is a conversation we can expand on today. You're more than welcome, the three of you, to come on the stage with us. Obviously, this is going to be a conversation that I would love to elaborate on. But BJ, I want to welcome formally to my very, very new adventure to launch this audio event. So how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah. So we have the structure that we've been using to dive into these conversations, and more importantly, to get to know BJ more in depth. His approach to leadership and the needs of leadership that he is supporting is very unique. And so we'll get to know you better, BJ, through the conversation. But without spoiling it, I want to start with the signature question that I've been asking the brave guests that have come on the audio event with me so far. What is your personal LinkedIn content creation ABCs? And what I mean ABCs, we're gonna walk through three different categories of things you do to get you in the mindset of being a content creator on this platform. So let's start with a thing that you often leave for the last minute.
Creating my post for the next day to the last minute.
Okay. So, well, that sounds like leading into the next question, which is a best practice that you've learned so far.
Yeah, I think, well, I definitely am not one of those people that's planned a month out in my content. I try to be very consistent with my messaging. And so there is a specific audience that I relate to and that I think I have a voice that I'm speaking to, specifically product managers that are facing the challenge of using their voice and trying to speak up for themselves, get more visibility and recognition in the workplace and in their life. And so while I'm not super diligent about posting, way in advance, I do try to be really consistent with who the target audience is and trying to bring value to that space.
That's amazing. And I hope that as we move through the conversation here, you share a little bit on your journey to even get started here on the platform, because I think that's a really important and inspiring piece of conversation as you took, the decision and make the first steps to get you in that direction.
Yeah.
But let's go with the letter C, and then we can start elaborating more. What is a creativity booster for those days when you find yourself uninspired?
Oh, I love this question. Honestly, my kids. It seems strange, but I have wonderful boys. I have all boys, and my kids often inspire me to think differently about things. And so when I'm struggling, I just try to spend some time playing with my kids. It's definitely not the typical approach of looking at other posts and other things, but often I find that I need to get away from the computer to find inspiration. And so typically it's my kids, just interacting with them, seeing how they view life and they approach life with a different wonder. And it forces me to think differently.
I mean, they really are a source of creativity all day long, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's really good. So let's go and talk about your post. I think this is the part that I always enjoy the most in this conversation so far, because it really is a window, that you have opened for all of us to start to get to know you and what you care about, and why you do what you do. And so I'm going to ask you, I know when we spoke the first time, you did say that your wife is a sounding board for you when you create content. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. And I know at some point, you have read, things out loud, and she has commented and stuff like that, which I
Very much
found,
so.
yeah, I found amazing that you have that kind of partnership. But the premise of this conversation, obviously, is if my LinkedIn post could talk. And so some things that I've been doing just to get us all acclimated on your post is that I come in as a voiceover, obviously with my accent, which is not going to sound at all as the conversations you have at home. But I want to read your post out loud so that we take some time to reflect it together, and then from there we can start branching off to more parts of this conversation. So I'm going to I'm going to get started. So BJ's post was written and shared about 2 weeks ago, and it says, your ability to communicate enhances how others view your entire skill set. Picture this. If you do great work, but you suck at communicating your value, then you will always be underestimated. However, if the quality of your work is average, but you articulate it well, you're perceived as an expert. Don't believe me? Think back on your work experience. Have you ever met someone who was in a leadership position and always talked a big game, but never accomplished anything? I'm going to put a parenthesis here because yes, many times. You may have even said to yourself, how did this person get in that position? Now consider the opposite. Have you ever met someone who was absolutely brilliant, but for some reason they were never promoted? You may have wondered, how come no one seems to see how valuable this person is? If you want a promotion, you don't need another certificate, an MBA, or an AI Udemy course. More than likely, you just need to improve your messaging, storytelling, and communication. And he closes with, I teach product managers how to increase their impact and improve their storytelling. Ready for a change? So let's let that sink in, because there's so much of this that I really want to opine on, because I agree with you. But when you wrote, what motivated you? Let's start there. What motivated you to write this piece of content, BJ?
Yeah, I can think of so many times in my career where I've worked with absolutely wonderful people that struggled with their voice. And even as I became a leader and I had large teams, there were so many people that I felt like I was almost advocating for them harder than they were advocating for themselves. And I felt like a lot of that came to, or came from their struggle to articulate their value. And often they felt uncomfortable or awkward, and they didn't know how to self promote themselves because it does feel unnatural. And you feel like maybe, you're being too arrogant when articulating the things that you've accomplished. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of people face. But the unfortunate part is that they were doing incredible work, and they, in many cases, deserve to be promoted. And then on the flip side, I can think of dozens of people where I'm like, why are they in this position? And they just talk and talk and talk. And they may even have compelling stories that are fun to listen to, but they're not adding a whole lot of value to the business. And I remember, even being captivated by some of those people initially. Maybe I can think of examples where I had new leaders come into the business and they were even higher than me, and they did talk a big game, and I was captivated at first. And then 6 months in, I'm like, they're just talking. Like there's not a whole lot of value being added. And I think that cognitive dissonance forced me to realize how important that storytelling is. Now, obviously, it should be matched with performance, but I just realized, oh, so much of this is about your ability to articulate your value and communicate with others. And I just started to realize how important that skill is. And if it's a gap for you, then I think regardless of how talented you are, in a lot of ways, I think it's going to hold you back because humans are full of all sorts of biases. And if a person cannot clearly articulate their value, we tend to perceive that value less. And that's just an unfortunate reality of our culture. And so I was inspired to try to help others to improve their storytelling, because I know a bunch of incredible people that have insane value, and they're wonderful humans that are contributing to the world and contributing to the workplace. And if only more people could see and hear their voice, I think they would have a much larger impact in the organizations they're in, and then ultimately in the world. And so that's something that I'm deeply passionate about. I want to help others to find their voice. And I think LinkedIn has been a great platform, one, to help me do that. But I think it's a great platform to help others. And to be honest, that's why I've resonated so much with your message and your mission to help people find their voice.
Oh my gosh, this is everything that you've said is really touching me personally, because I've been in both positions that you know kind of elaborated on your post. I've been in the position of really wondering and questioning, how what it there seems to be an underlying assumption that because you speak more and say more and use word salads sometimes to try to show that you quote unquote know something, that catapults you automatically. And as an introvert and someone who genuinely has struggled for a good part of my career to consolidate, who I am, what I care about, my courage to put it out there in the workplace, on LinkedIn, having an advocate and an ally in the way you're describing would have made my personal journey, oh my gosh, so much more tolerable and less,
Right.
I have, with less experiences of feeling like a failure in some ways. When sometimes you're just trying to really figure out yourself and how to interject and disrupt in environments that value um, the the person that it's more of a communicator without the substance than the person with the substance that does not necessarily has figured out how to communicate that yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is how I'm going to deviate a little bit, because I think this is tapping also into the idea of building credibility, right, on both ends.
Yeah.
Right. You're touching on an aspect here that I think it's pivotal to whether you're a content creator or you are a leader in an organization or you're looking for a job. like how do you convey the credibility of who you are combined with what you can do, combined with your knowledge and expertise. What is your opinion on that in particular?
Yeah, I think it's so important. It's so important that we think about exactly what we're trying to communicate and what we're trying to accomplish in our messaging. And I think a lot of times we do just kind of word salad, maybe in presentations. But I think sometimes it can be easy. Well, I'll start with the workplace. In the workplace, we only we're very intentional if we have some big speech or presentation, right? We spend a lot of time preparing for that. But outside of that context, we're not as intentional with our messaging. And I think for somebody who this isn't natural, I think that can be a mistake. And I think an approach can be to start thinking more intentionally and to set aside time to prepare for those moments whenever they're happening. So for a product manager, for example, this is somebody who spends a huge portion of their time in meetings and working with cross-functional teams. And this would obviously apply to leaders and many other roles, but how often are they setting time aside to intentionally think about what they're communicating in each of those meetings? Because I know when I was a product manager, I went from back-to-back meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. And to be honest, that context switching, I think did more harm than good, right? You jump into a meeting right after another meeting. It takes about the first 15 minutes to get your context in the right spot. You've already set a poor tone for the meeting, and then you're jumping right into the next one, and then that process keeps repeating. And so the first thing that I would recommend is one, setting aside time to intentionally think about your message. And so one thing I started to do is anytime I'm joining a meeting, I have it on my calendar or something like that. I'm trying to think about who is my audience? What do I want them to know? What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do? And just that simple kind of reminder when I think about each meeting helps me to reset and think about how can I be more intentional with my messaging. And it's something that everybody can do, and it's a great place to start. It will obviously still take practice, but even just that intentionality alone radically changed my approach to how I work with my teams, and it forced me to be more intentional, and it forced me to put little 5-10 minute breaks in my calendar in between meetings so that I could reset and be intentional. So I'll pause there if you have any questions, but happy to go on to the other portions.
No, I am attentively listening. I mean, you're coming up with you're putting into a framework what seems more intuitive, but I think it's very helpful to articulate it the way you're doing it, because it makes it practical, and it's a great way to remind you of how to prioritize what you want to say. Sometimes I know for me, I have so much in my head and I'm so opinionated, and I have so much I want to say that it's really a traffic jam in my head most of the time. I try not to make it look like that. I masquerade it a little bit, but it's really sometimes overwhelming. And frameworks are very helpful for me to organize my thinking and what I want to prioritize as far as my ideas go. So I wanna take a little pause here just to welcome Rakesh and Ratika and Sauku. I don't know if I said your name correctly, Saiku, and Leslie. Thank you, Leslie, and Julie and Radisha. So I appreciate you all being here, and please, come up to the stage with us as soon as you wanted to contribute or add more to the conversation or ask questions or whatnot. You're always welcome. So BJ, let's take then the other part you wanted to dive into.
Yeah, sounds good. I think the other part is just to take advantage of the tools like LinkedIn. And so one of the ways that I began to practice is honestly on LinkedIn. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but one of the things I realized about myself is that I more naturally, I think better when I'm communicating in person. or even speaking out loud. That comes more natural to me given my background. But I struggled with being as intentional in my communication in the written form. And that was something that I recognized was a gap. And so I decided to actually do a 20-day LinkedIn challenge. This was now about 100 days ago. It was towards the end of last year. I decided to post every day on LinkedIn. And if you go back and look at those posts, obviously you still can, and they're there. They're terrible. They're really, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I didn't really have a clear message. I didn't have any purpose with my audience, but largely it wasn't about that. It was about me finding my voice. And I think a lot of times we think when we're posting on LinkedIn that, oh, we have to have this brilliant message and it's going to be seen by everybody and it has to be perfect. And I think one of the things that was most important for me to learn is that the reality is most posts, people will just scroll through, they'll see it, and if they like it, they'll resonate with it. If they don't, they just scroll on. And one of the most important things for me to learn was just post. That it doesn't matter that much. Part of this can be my exploration and my journey. And so for me, I wanted to practice getting better at writing. I'm still practicing. I'm still very much, I would say in my mind, not to the level I'd like to be in my written communication. But I'm so glad that I took the risk and that I keep putting myself out there. And I'm grateful for all of those that have given me feedback along the way on ways to improve the way that I communicate in the written form. So my challenge would be to start.
That sounds like Julie as well. Something Julie would say. Just start with the first step.
Love it.
I learned my lesson. Okay. So I need to ask you, BJ, because I also know you have a very fascinating career story. And I wonder if we could touch a little bit on that before we keep kind of breaking down your post and you know where the message needs to go and touch people. But I'm imagining some of what you wrote in terms of, you know, using your messaging, using your voice, sharpening your communications from a career standpoint as a product manager today is not only a theoretical idea. I imagine this is something that you also discovered in your journey, where you also, I picture you, since that's the premise of your post, I picture you in scenarios where you looked up to you know, those people in positions you probably aspired to, like you mentioned earlier, and got, you know, deceived in ways. And then when you were also in those situations where you felt like advocating for your peers, that may have had an impact on you personally. And are you open to share a little bit of the beginnings of your career, where you started and how you ended up where you are?
Yeah,
and how
absolutely.
and more importantly, how these played out for you, how you discovered that redefining yourself along the way and your voice help you find where you are today, which feels like very purposeful.
Yeah, well, I have a very unique background. I know a lot of product managers do, but for about the first 13 years of my career, I was actually a pastor of a church. And I got the opportunity to be an incredible part of a community and have a great impact. And a lot of what I now know and the skills that I've learned to attribute to product management really go all the way back to that. Because so much of, you know, being a pastor in a church is trying to motivate people who don't have any other intrinsic motivation to help those who don't have a voice and those in need. So for example, I was in a very wealthy area. Most of the people in the community worked at companies like Microsoft or big tech companies, and they had a lot of money. But there were definitely still needs in the community. And what I realized as a pastor is I'm trying to help the community, trying to help serve the community, trying to help people meet needs, but there wasn't any way to necessarily motivate somebody who worked at Microsoft. It's not like I could pay them to come help in, you know, a food kitchen or, you know, a soup kitchen or something like that. I couldn't afford that, and that likely wouldn't be very motivating for them. But what I could do is I could tell the stories of those who couldn't tell their own stories. And what this helped people understand is not only the impact that they could have on the situation, but on, those people's lives would have an impact on them. And so I learned very early on that the value of having a very clear story and a very clear vision to try to inspire people to volunteer for something that they otherwise wouldn't normally do. And when I made the shift to product management, which I guess is a whole story in itself, but I guess to summarize it, I loved being this leader of a nonprofit. I did not make a lot of money. I loved serving the community. And when I felt it was time to make a transition, I wanted to do something in tech. I had no idea how to make this transition. And I met with a friend of mine who had worked at all these big tech companies. I asked him to coach me. And honestly, he helped find my voice. And he knew me as a leader. He knew that I had worked with, hundreds of people in this position, and helped me translate that into ultimately I land a product management role. And what I found initially was I very much like most, right after a big career transition, I had this kind of imposter syndrome of, what am I doing here? I don't know how to do this. This is so different. And then what I very quickly realized is that all of the experiences that I had in my life, right, all I needed to do was reframe them. And then a lot of what product management does is about inspiring others through stories, connecting them to the challenges of the users, and then working together with teams. And I had spent my entire life doing exactly that. And so very quickly, I was able to be quite successful in product management and with leaders. And it all came back to kind of that initial message of, there is a problem that we're trying to solve, and I need to create a vision and a story of our product, of our customers' challenges, and inspire people to come along to help solve this challenge. And throughout the process, there were a lot of people that I looked up to in higher roles, and that was full of all kinds of excitement and disappointment. I do remember one time, we had a new leader come in, and they talked all the right thing. They spoke a big game, and I'm like, oh, this is somebody I definitely can look up to, who's going to teach me a whole bunch. And initially, we had a really great relationship. And fast forward about 6 months, I started to realize that, a lot of what they were saying was just talk. There wasn't a whole lot of action behind it. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, I was hoping that I was going to get this, coaching, and that I would learn all these new things. But I think after that experience, I was really disappointed, because I'm like, I don't think this person is actually adding a whole lot of value. And then flip that around, I had my direct boss actually was one of those people that was incredibly intelligent, and she did not articulate her, her skill set very well. She didn't, I would say, communication, and she would probably agree, communication wasn't her greatest, strong point. But I quickly realized that the initial person I thought who was going to teach me the most wasn't actually that person. It was really her. And she really pushed me forward. She gave me lots of opportunities, and in a lot of ways, it almost felt weird, because I was, I would say, like, I was more naturally somebody who would communicate and articulate my value, and I continued to grow, and so I really wanted to bring her along, even though she, outranked me in title. She was a great advocate, and I learned the value of that, and I'm so grateful for her and her support in my career. And that's really inspired me to continue to help others and push others, and not be afraid to look around and say, how can I help support others? And my initial assumption was the person that, is clearly articulating is the person. And I think that's kind of flipped on its head. Now I really look for, who are the people that are really driving this thing, that have a really good understanding, and maybe just don't have that voice to articulate it, and how can I help them continue to grow?
Oh my God, I have so much to say in reflection to what you said, and I'm just gonna play this out a little bit, because I think you're touching on the backbone of what it is to find your voice and your emphasis on being a values driven person from the start, having a moral compass from the get go, understanding, I mean, the level of empathy, obviously, that comes across when you tell your story, and your ability to see through, right, the dynamics and not get caught into it. But it also, to me, it reflects on, a huge value for being courageous, in so many different ways, not only, adventuring into a completely different career than what you've been doing, that some people from the outside might think there's no connection, right?
Right.
And you still saw the pattern, and you still were able to make a very smooth transition for yourself on how to translate where you were as a pastor and what you were doing for your community, and how you could overlay that same model and values driven leadership and advocacy and problem solving in a career that could have been considered more technical and pragmatic.
Right.
And I know I'm telling you things you already know, but I'm just to hear your story, it is a testimony that skills, number one, are truly transferable, and values are non-negotiable.
Yeah.
When it comes to having a voice and when it comes to taking risks.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
What did you want to provoke when you wrote your short story on that post? What did you think people, what do you want to put in people's minds? What seeds do you want to plant?
Yeah, I think most importantly, I've seen a lot of a common challenge among job seekers right now, and I know for product managers, is always to think about what certification can I add, because we like the idea of essentially saying, I just take this one course and that will be proof that I'm ready to move ahead, or proof that I'm hireable. And so I see a lot of people pursuing another certificate, or right, oh, if I have some course in AI, then immediately that will make me more hireable. And I've seen so many people pursuing these things. And I'm not trying to say that those aren't valuable, right? Obviously, an MBA is great, and if that adds your career code to it. But I think so often it feels like people pursue that certificate and they, put it on their LinkedIn, and then they wonder, well, how come things didn't change? And I think what I've learned is I don't have an MBA. I don't even have a degree. Um, so my background is obviously very unique, and I'm not suggesting everybody take my career path. It's obviously very unique. But I do think that there is so much more value a person can have in their story and the unique experiences they have. And you don't just have to have another AI certificate or an MBA in order to articulate that. And that's my hope. My hope is that that people can begin to look at whether you're job seeking, that you can begin to look at your narrative and what your story says. And part of that is how you communicate your story in interviews and how you articulate that to hiring managers. But another part of that is also your profile and your resume. And one of the things I like to do is just zoom out and look at a resume or look at a LinkedIn and just say, what does this tell me about this person? What kind of story do I see coming out? What kind of conclusions would I make? And sometimes just having another person to think about it objectively and think about it from a story standpoint can be really helpful and freeing. And so my hope is that people realize that working on their communication will significantly increase their value. And my real hope is that those hidden gems, the people in my example, those that are absolutely brilliant, but they're not getting those promotions that they absolutely deserve. And we all know people like that. that they would feel challenged and encouraged to continue to work on this skill along with their many other great skills and get the opportunity to share their voice and hopefully be recognized.
So beautiful. And the way you talk, BJ, like it's mesmerizing. You have a way to really tell the story with beautiful words and with a very beautiful intonation that is captivating. Paul, welcome.
Oh, so great. Just another wonderful event. I'm so happy for what you're doing. And I have to run soon, but I came in to say happy birthday, my friend. Have an amazing day. And I always love hearing your accent. And I don't know why you don't love it, as much as all of us. It's always just so unique to hear you share things. But I wanted to share something really quick about storytelling because for so long, I think you hear everybody talk about storytelling like it's this pretty generic thing, but a lot of people really don't actually get to experience the power of it. And I remember when I was doing Impossible Equals Impossible, I had my first guest on, who was one of my best friends, and she and my co-host had never met before. But it was the most interesting thing because the entire time that she was sharing her story, I could kind of see it in my co-host's face, and like she couldn't really talk because she's like, wow, she's really sharing my story. And I think that when we're talking about connection and communication in correlation to storytelling, it's this idea of the thing that makes it so powerful for connection is when we can see ourselves in that small part of somebody else's story. And that is why it becomes so powerful for building connection and communication. And another wonderful conversation. Great to meet you as well, BJ. Love everything that you shared. And yeah, Lindsay, happy birthday. And I just wanted to make sure that I came up and told you that. And it's been such a pleasure having you in my network, and can't wait to support you on the rest of the things that you're doing. So yeah, have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Now you told my secret. I'm a year older, everyone.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I think this whole topic on storytelling is so fantastic because, I feel like sometimes it comes natural to people and sometimes it's a learned skill. And when you're learning storytelling, I feel like you're not only learning to speak and tell a story, but you're learning to listen to your heart. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Because it's not, like you said, it's not just putting the words together, but how it's like it's a little magical if we think about it. It's how the composition of that and the intonation and the intentionality behind it and being able to really speak from a place where you walk a mile in those shoes. Right, it's something that you can only do if you're coming from an internal place, from some place inside of you that has that deeper awareness. And obviously, you can do it in many other ways, but for me, that's how it kind of makes sense. And that's how I hear you talk. And that's why I feel it's so unique and so beautiful, really. Yeah. Can you share with the group here? You have been posting, this is not something you've been doing for a long time, right?
No.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I actually started posting consistently December 16th of last year. And prior to that, I almost never posted. The only post that I would do is basically congratulations on your new role. And most of the time I wouldn't even do that. To be honest, I still am pretty opposed to most of social media. I don't have other accounts. I don't do anything other than LinkedIn. But I decided that I wanted to practice and I wanted to do this experiment very much in product management fashion. And so I started with a 20-day challenge where I challenged myself to post every day on LinkedIn. And I continued to do that. I was very, I did there a whole lot. Obviously, people started to recognize something because I went from 0 posts to now I'm posting every day. So I did get a lot of comments from friends and encouragement there. But after that, I began to realize, not only did my profile start, exploding, and I got lots of feedback and lots of comments and engagement, but I also realized the incredible value it was for me to learn how to articulate myself better in a written format. And LinkedIn's unique. It's this combination of short form, and you have to be a lot more concise and thoughtful in how you communicate, because you can't just kind of word vomit on a post. You have to be really thoughtful about how you post. And so it's been a great skill. So after that, I posted and I shared my experience with others. And I just said, hey, do you want to know what 20 days will do? And it was very clear, right? My profile had grown. I've added, I don't remember exactly the amount, but it was well over 100 people, connections in my network, and a bunch of views and things like that. But in the comments, several people were like, man, I wish I could do that. I could never do that. I could never post every day. And I actually challenged a complete stranger. And I said, hey, she had commented on my post. And I'm like, how would you like to do a 30-day challenge with me? I'm like, I'm challenging you to do it for the next 30 days. What if we committed to posting? And then several other people commented, and they're like, hey, can I join? And then it just exploded with complete strangers, by the way. I didn't know any of these people, but by the end, I think the group ended up being close to 20 people that all agreed that we were going to post every day using the hashtag 30-day stats. And so for the next 30 days, we all posted every day. And there were all kinds of ups and downs in the process. Some of us would, miss a post here or there, and we all tried to encourage each other, hold each other accountable to this. And these are complete strangers. I literally had never met them before, but there was this camaraderie that we all came around trying to accomplish this goal, and everybody was learning to find their voice. And to be clear, none of these people were influencers. None of them, had done this before. This was all new. And so we decided to track all of our stats ahead of time. And at the end, several people had gone crazy viral with all kinds of posts, which I still have not done, by the way, but a lot of people did. And what we found is that there were so many benefits to it. One, people were able to learn their own voice. They were able to, improve their communication. But many of the job seekers had made great connections. Their profile views were going up exponentially. And there were so many benefits that came out of the group that the group decided to do it again. And so we actually formed a LinkedIn group called 30-Day Stats, and we just finished our second 30-day challenge. So now I've been posting well over 100 days, and we literally just finished it yesterday. And now the group, I think, has over 25 people, and it's just anyone committed to posting and trying to take a leap of faith. And sometimes that's all you need, is another person to say, you can do it, let's do it together. And I've now built some incredible friendships out of that experience, and I've gotten to know people. And I'll never forget, at the end of the first challenge, we all hopped on a Zoom call, bunch of strangers, and we all got the opportunity to just share our stories, get to know each other a little more, and share our experiences of what we've learned about LinkedIn, what posts worked well, what didn't, and had a great time just kind of sharing and connecting. And I think that's the beauty of all of this, is trying to find your voice. And sometimes you just need a friend, somebody to encourage you to take the first step, or maybe just call you out in a comment and say, hey, let's put these words to action. And so I'm so grateful for all of those that were willing to take the challenge. So
That is such a cool story. And see, it shows again your value for, courageous actions and how you are becoming a ripple effect on other people's lives. And I just think out of everything we can do on this platform and these conversations we can have, that's really the most beautiful and rewarding thing we can get. And I applaud you for taking the first step and creating a movement and being creative with it. It's inspiring for me too, and I know for people in the audience, as we are thinking about, how can we use these capabilities for good, beyond right trying to find business or whatnot. I think it's just so great. We're gonna get closer to the end here, but I have just two more questions for you. So one is, what would a follow-up post say today, BJ, 2, 3 weeks later?
Oh, I love this question. Now I'm gonna have to write it. Right now,
that's the idea,
right?
and then you gotta go post it.
And now I gotta go post it. What would a follow-up post say?
You're creating in real time here, no pressure.
I know. Yeah, no pressure at all. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think I would really want to focus on that person who struggles to articulate their value. That would definitely be the target of this post, and trying to inspire them to take action. And I think there's a lot of different ways they could take action. It doesn't necessarily have to be, posting it on LinkedIn. I think that's an option, but I hope I could inspire them to think about, man, I think if I can put myself in their shoes and the times that I felt that way, I think a lot of times I would discredit myself, feeling like I didn't have anything to say, or I would feel like I don't know how to communicate it without being awkward. And so I think my follow-up post would focus specifically on those two emotions. How do I help somebody recognize the value and worth that they have, and identify that everybody has a superpower, even if they don't know what it is or how to recognize it. And then I think the second thing would be having the courage to take the first step. And now I'm gonna have to really think about what that post would be. But that's what I would want to do. I'd want to inspire those people to start taking the first step, to recognize their superpower and begin to find their voice.
I think you owe us a post with that, okay? I mean, we can talk for a long, long time with you, Vijay. We're coming to the ramp down of this conversation that I hope is not the last one. You really, really have a gift for the world. Before we have to wrap up, let's say what would be 3 things you would want the people in the audience today to know about you, to remember you for, to not leave today without knowing about you?
Wow. I hope that I've come across as somebody who's trying to do my best to find and articulate my voice, but do so in a way that's genuine and authentic. I think it can be easy to become a persona on platforms like LinkedIn and to try to be a different person than you really are. I work hard to try to not do that. So I hope that in my posts, in the way that you've experienced me today, that if we were to sit down across the table at a coffee shop, that you'd have the exact same experience. I'd say the second thing is, I hope that my stories inspired you to do something big or different, and to think about your skills in maybe a unique way. And if you are on the edge and you're thinking about doing something different, making a career change, I hope that my story in some ways can inspire you to at least consider it, and evaluate what are the overlap between the experiences that you have, and I hope they would inspire you to take a risk. And then lastly, I hope that we've had fun. because I think I've really enjoyed getting the opportunity to talk with you and to share the story, but also I love what you're doing. And I hope that we can continue to spread the message and encourage others.
Absolutely, and you know you have me in your corner. Everybody on this group today, the team that we were able to put together today that showed up are amazing in their own ways. So my encouragement is, you know, to cross-pollinate with each other. I'm doing what I'm doing because I have the support of so many people on this call, and we can replicate the support for each other and just expand it. And just go out there and take LinkedIn over and change their business model for good. All right, everyone. BJ, it was such a pleasure to talk with you. Like I said, I hope it's not the last time. I know we will continue collaborating. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to talk to us today, for continuing to support this initiative. And hopefully I'll see you again next week. Same time, same day. Have a great week, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks, Lindsay.
BJ.